The United States is drowning. In just the past few months, catastrophic floods have ripped through America from coast to coast, killing over 100 people and leaving entire communities underwater. From Texas to Pennsylvania, from New Mexico to North Carolina, no state is safe from nature's most deadly force. What's happening right now isn't just bad weather. It's a climate emergency that's rewriting the map of America. And the footage you're about to see will leave you speechless. What you're witnessing isn't isolated incidents. It's a coordinated assault by water across the entire United States. In 2025 alone, flash floods have claimed more American lives than tornadoes, hurricanes, and wildfires combined. Today, I'm taking you through the most devastating flood disasters that have torn through America in recent months. We'll see real-time footage of entire towns disappearing underwater and understand why these floods are becoming more deadly and more frequent than ever before. And what we discover about the pattern behind these floods will shock you, because this is just the beginning. Our story begins in Texas, on July 4th, 2025, a day that was supposed to be about celebrating America, but instead became one of the deadliest flood disasters in the state's history. At least 118 people died when more than 20 inches of rain fell in just 3 hours across central Texas. The Guadalupe River surged nearly 26 feet in under an hour, its second highest level on record. But the most heartbreaking tragedy happened at Camp Mystic, a girls' Christian summer camp. Floodwaters swept away the cabins where 23 girls, ages 12 to 15, were sleeping. 27 campers and staff died that night. 3 survivors were found clinging to trees 3 miles downstream, being treated for hypothermia. In Kerrville alone, over 300 homes were destroyed or rendered uninhabitable. The business district was devastated, with over 50 commercial properties affected. Preliminary damage estimates exceeded $120 million. But Texas was just the beginning. Just days later, the flood crisis moved northeast, hitting Pennsylvania and Virginia with unprecedented force. From late June to early July, central Pennsylvania and northern Virginia were struck by a storm system that produced over 3 inches of rain in 18 hours. But this wasn't just rain. It was a wall of water that overwhelmed every drainage system. In Wheeling's Elm Grove neighborhood, nearly 2 inches of rain fell in less than an hour. Emergency crews conducted at least 12 swift water rescues, reaching residents trapped in submerged vehicles. What made this flooding particularly devastating was that many communities were still recovering from earlier floods. Families who had just begun repairs found themselves flooded again, forcing them to start over from nothing. In northern Virginia, intense thunderstorms overwhelmed local drainage systems near the Potomac River. Roads and highways were flooded, forcing closures and emergency evacuations. Power outages affected thousands as utility crews worked to restore service amid ongoing storms. But perhaps nowhere has been hit harder than West Virginia, where communities have faced flood after flood with devastating regularity. In late June, Wheeling faced sudden and intense flash flooding. Local creeks rose over 5 inches in under 45 minutes, spilling into streets, basements, and yards. Emergency crews conducted swift water rescues throughout the night. What makes West Virginia's situation particularly tragic is the cycle of destruction and recovery. The June floods followed devastating mid-June floods that had claimed 9 lives and left 6 people missing. Approximately 60 homes and more than 20 businesses were damaged or destroyed. Families who had just started rebuilding were hit again. Wet walls, flooded furniture, mud-covered floors, the same nightmare repeating over and over. The flood crisis then moved to Georgia, where Atlanta, one of America's busiest transportation hubs, was brought to its knees. On June 28th, heavy storms inundated metro Atlanta, with rainfall reaching nearly 3 inches per hour. But it wasn't just the rain. It was where it hit that made this flood particularly devastating. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the world's busiest airport, was forced to halt ground operations. More than 400 flights were delayed, and about 150 were canceled as crews worked to pump water from taxiways and runways. I-75 at the I-285 interchange was completely submerged, stranding dozens of vehicles. Rescue teams assisted drivers in flooded underpasses, while surface roads in Forest Park, College Park, and Fayetteville flooded quickly. Over 40,000 Georgia Power customers lost electricity as gusty winds brought down trees and power lines. The economic impact was staggering, millions of dollars lost in just a few hours. But perhaps the most terrifying flood happened in New Mexico, where a perfect storm of factors created an unstoppable wall of destruction. On July 8th, the village of Ruidoso was struck by a catastrophic flash flood that killed at least 3 people and left dozens injured. Within an hour, more than 3 inches of rain pounded the region, entire houses being torn from their foundation and carried downstream by violent currents. But here's what made this flood so deadly. The 2024 South Fork and Salt wildfires had burned large areas around Ruidoso, leaving the soil hydrophobic. The ground couldn't absorb water, forcing nearly all the rain to run off instantly. The Rio Ruidoso rose from just over 1 foot to more than 20 feet in less than 60 minutes. Its highest and fastest recorded surge ever. Small tributaries transformed into destructive flows filled with ash, mud, rocks, and wildfire debris. Over 85 people were rescued by emergency crews and the National Guard, some lifted from rooftops surrounded by floodwater. The most recent disaster brings us to North Carolina, where Tropical Storm Chantel unleashed unprecedented destruction. From July 6th through July 9th, North Carolina bore the brunt of Chantel's relentless assault. Some locations received upwards of 10 inches of rain in just hours. In Chapel Hill, widespread inundation forced emergency evacuations as rising waters engulfed homes and apartment complexes. The Camelot Village neighborhood became a critical zone for rescue operations. The Haw River surged to nearly 32 feet, nearing the historic high mark set during Hurricane Florence. When you see water levels that high, you're looking at a once-in-a-generation event. Multiple dams failed, including one at a local country club that worsened flooding in nearby communities. Over 100 roads became either flooded or impassable, isolating residents and hampering emergency response. At least 6 people died across North Carolina. As if the devastation wasn't widespread enough, the flood crisis then moved to the Midwest, hitting Illinois and Iowa. Beginning July 10th, northern Illinois and parts of Iowa saw heavy rainfall that ranged between 1 and 3 inches over already saturated terrain. Cities like Rockford were hit hard with swollen rivers and flash floods. Neighborhoods including Rockford Township and McChesney Park were significantly impacted, forcing emergency services to conduct water rescues and damage assessments. What's particularly frustrating for Midwest residents is the recurring nature of these floods. Longtime inhabitants noted that some flood-prone intersections and neighborhoods have faced repeated inundation over the years, with little effective mitigation. But here's what makes all these floods truly terrifying. They're not random. There's a pattern emerging. Every single one of these floods was caused by the same fundamental problem: stalled weather systems drawing persistent moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. Warm, moist air gets trapped over regions for hours or even days, dumping unprecedented amounts of rain. Climate change is making these training storms more common. The atmosphere can hold more moisture as it warms, and weather patterns are becoming more erratic and persistent. Behind every statistic is a human story. Behind every flood zone is a family whose life was changed forever. We've heard from families who lost everything in Texas, children who survived Camp Mystic, elderly residents rescued from rooftops in West Virginia, travelers stranded at Atlanta's airport, and communities in North Carolina still searching for missing loved ones. But we've also seen incredible heroism. Over 800 first responders mobilized across these disasters. Emergency crews aided by National Guard units utilized helicopters, high-clearance vehicles, and swift water rescue teams. Neighbors helped neighbors. Volunteers worked alongside emergency personnel. Communities that had every reason to give up, instead, chose to rebuild. These floods have exposed a terrifying truth about America's infrastructure. We're not prepared for the new reality of extreme weather. Bridges buckled underwater, roads crumbled or were buried beneath mud. Water treatment plants failed, forcing thousands to rely on bottled water. Power grids collapsed, leaving entire regions in darkness. In New Mexico, $16.8 million had been allocated for post-fire flood mitigation, but critical protective measures remained incomplete due to administrative delays. Sediment barriers, drainage channels, and erosion control reinforcements were only partially implemented. This is happening everywhere. Our infrastructure was built for the climate of the past, not the climate of the future. Over 100 Americans have died in these floods. Thousands more have lost their homes, their businesses, their entire way of life. The economic damage runs into the billions.
Coming again! Coming again!